Right. So on monetary policy, growth is looking pretty buoyant. The RBI's estimate is 7% for the current fiscal year. It's higher than our estimates at 6.6%. On inflation, we think that there are some imminent risks, especially from food inflation. Core inflation in India has been coming down, both core goods and services, but food inflation from wheat, pulses or legumes, sugar, spices, all of these are upside risks, especially in the first half of the calendar year 2024. And hence, our view is that the RBI remains on hold, maintains a hawkish stance, keeps liquidity in the banking system tight such that the overnight banking rate is closer to the upper end of the policy corridor. And we are only seeing an easing cycle much later in the year. Even when the easing cycle comes, our view is that it's going to be shallow. India did not really hike as much. Our repo rate is only at 6.5. And therefore, we think that when the RBI starts to ease later in the later half of 2024, it's only going to be a 50 basis points of easing. But remember, liquidity is very tight. And hence, liquidity easing will give you a little more financial conditions easing in the system.
Right. Everybody's watching India and looking at India's growth story is very, very compelling. It always has been, but post-pandemic particularly, and while obviously the narrative that's doing the rounds is that this is going to be India's decade. In that sense, what is the long-term trend growth that you see for India, that India can sustain?
So right now, our potential growth estimate is in the early six handle. It's 6.1. If India continues to do well on investment rate increases towards at least half of what they have seen in the earlier peaks, and the labor force participation rate increases, we think that the potential growth can get towards 6.7 or 6.8% by the end of the decade. It's going to be a gradual rise up, but we think that the right things are being done, especially in terms of infrastructure creation. Some of the reforms on the financial sector, namely the IBC, and that should help India's potential growth inch higher towards 6.7% by the end of the decade.